You might recall from the last lesson that I mentioned the MVC architecture, or Model View Controller, and at this point I want to go over that in a little more detail. Here's a diagram of MVC. Let's just follow the numbers and go through and get a sense of what's happening in this application. So first of all, we would go to /users, that's step one, and that hits the Rails router. So let's go over here and take a look at that. It's in config routes. And the router routes /users to the index action in the user's controller. You might wonder where that is in this file, and the answer is it's happening here. There's a magical line that creates a bunch of different routes for us, and that essentially maps something like /users to the index action in the user's controller. So let's take a look at the user's controller. It's an app controllers user's controller. Now, I want you not to pay too much attention to the things in this file. It's quite complicated. In fact, there are things in this file that I don't really understand. But here's the index action. And what this is doing is this is creating what's called an instance variable at users, and that's equal to user.all. So let's look back at our diagram. So step 2 is mapping to the index action in the user's controller. Step 3 is to talk to the user model. That's what this is doing. Capital user here is the user model. You might be able to guess where that is. It's in app models user.rb. You can see the file is practically empty. This little character here in Ruby indicates inheritance. So there is a class that defines a bunch of different functionality called active record base, and user automatically has all of that functionality by virtue of inheritance. Again, we'll be talking about this in more depth later in the tutorial if this material is new to you. So step 3 is to make a call to the user model, and then the user model actually talks to the database. That's the part of MVC that's responsible for interacting with the database that actually stores the data, that persists it from one request to the next, and so on. So step 4. Step 5 is to pass that result back to the controller. So you can see here, that's this. That's where user.all is returning all of the users and putting it in this variable. And that's at users here, and that's number 6. And that then goes to the view, which is index.html.erb. ERB stands for embedded Ruby, by the way. Again, we'll be talking a lot more about this later. So it's an app views, users, and index.html.erb. And what this file does is that it goes through each of the users, and for each of the users it displays the name, email address, and then some links to show, edit, destroy. So that is what creates this page. This page is being created by this view here. And then it passes the HTML back to the controller, which passes it back to the browser. Now, I'm actually not sure. Sometimes it's possible, it depends on the details, that this HTML might be going right from the view back to the browser, but conceptually I like to think of the controller as just sitting in the middle and controlling everything. That's why it's called the controller. In any case, this is the end result is that step 8 is the HTML gets passed back to the browser, and then it gets rendered like this. It's conventional in web applications for slash, which is just this, to be some sort of index page. So as a final step in discussing this user scaffold, I'd like to change this page from hello world to the user's index. See if you can figure out how to do this. Of course, I'm about to show you, but this is a good practice. So here are the routes. Well, first of all, let's get rid of this hello action that we don't need anymore. Right, in the routes here, the root route is being routed to the name of the controller, which now we want to be, we'll take a look over here, it's plural. This is a convention in Rails. It's the user's controller, and we want it to be the index action. Okay. It's right here. So let's save that and see if it worked. Look at that. So now it's kind of funny that I keep calling it slash, but if you put the slash on it, it disappears. But this is called slash. This is the root route. And now it's, in fact, connected to the user's index. Before leaving this user model and moving on to the micropost data model, I'd like to make a few comments just evaluating this thing we've made. I should mention in this context that when you talk about not just a data model but also this set of URLs, that this kind of object in Rails is called a resource. So this is the user's resource. It's a set of URLs and the database backend.